Hey, this is Meridith Elliott, Powell. You know what time it is. It is 8 a.m. Eastern, Saturday morning. Mark and I are freezing our tails off in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Why are we here?
I know.
Why?
Here at a conference. But you know what? It is our favorite time of the week. It is time for Sales Logic, the show where we dive into the strategies, discuss the steps, everything that you need to know to sell effectively. Mark, got a good show today?
We got a good show. We're going to be talking about choosing the right sales strategy, perfect as we head into the new year. And the lightning round, we're going to be talking about top 10 strategies to stay motivated and selling through the holidays.
All right, let's do it.
Let's go.
All right, welcome back to Sales Logic. Now, before Mark tells you everything that's on tap for today, I like to tell you how the show works because we want to feature you, the audience. If you have questions, if you have concerns, if you just want to sell more effectively, send your questions to saleslogicpodcast.com because we'll feature you right here. We're going to discuss a hot topic, do a lightning round, cover a book. Mark, let's dive in.
Okay, so choosing the right sales strategy. Now, this seems easy, this seems simple, but there are so many variables that come into play. What are some strategies that maybe you've used to select your strategy?
You know, first of all, I think that one of the biggest mistakes we make with sales strategies is we think about how we're comfortable selling. And a sales strategy is not about what is comfortable for you. It is about what is effective with the customer. And what I mean by that is just yesterday, Mark and I are here doing some masterminds in Minneapolis, working on our businesses. And we were talking about what your sales style is in our mastermind yesterday. And some people were saying, I'm not comfortable smiling and dialing using the phone. Other people were saying, I much prefer sending emails. Well, it isn't about you. And it really is about what is effective. So when you ask me that question, I'm constantly changing my sales process based on what is working in the marketplace at the moment.
Thank you for saying that because it's so powerful. Because so many salespeople I run into, well, it's email. It's email. That's all I do, and they're doing it because it's easy for them. I'll go back to the argument. People say, well, I can't stand the telephone. Cold calling doesn't work. The people who say that, and I'm not a fan of cold calling, but the people who say that are the ones who are afraid to pick up the phone and call.
Yeah.
You have to do what works for your customer, and it evolves and it's different because, again, I look at my sales strategy. It's dramatically different than what it was just 18 to 24 months ago.
Yeah.
And I'm sure yours is too, right?
Yeah, completely. So here's a couple of questions. I think when it comes to finding the right sales strategy is number one, you have got to define who your customer is. Get crystal clear on who your customer is. And then the second question is ask yourself, where is your customer? Because Mark, I was thinking about this when I knew we were going to talk about this for the show. I was thinking back to the years when I was a banker. And when I was a banker, you literally were a community bank. I mean, I'm so freaking old that we didn't do loans online. We didn't do anything like that. And so the way that I sold in those days was by joining the Rotary Club, joining the Chamber of Commerce, taking positions in my community, building relationships, and doing things like that. If I were a banker today, that would not be the right sales strategy.
Well, and that's the whole thing. It's adapting to where your marketplace is at. For some industries, it's text messaging. For some industries, it's email. For some industries, it's calling. But you have to be able to, and this means you are going to be probably outside of your comfort zone.
Yes.
And ultimately then, to the customer you're dealing with, everybody has a preferred communication method, and then we have a secondary communication method. The first thing I got to do if I'm trying to sell to you is find out what is your primary communication method. And that's what I have to use, even if it's not. But that also means it may be different times of the day. Yeah. It might be different days of the week. There are different seasonalities. And again, when you adopt a sales strategy, there are so many pieces that come into play. Because again, right now we're recording this in the fourth quarter. Fourth quarter for a lot of industries, no go. But for other industries, it's game on. So you got to understand your marketplace.
Yeah, I love what Natalie is saying here, member of our Sales Logic Mastermind. Phone calls are so powerful, and recently people have really appreciated a call instead of a virtual video call. So true, Natalie, right? But by the end of first quarter, that could change again. Mark, I want to come back to what you said is that, you know, I think what you said is so important when you said that I've got to figure out your preferred communication styles. I cannot tell you how many people email my husband. Rob, if you went into Rob's inbox right now, there is probably 2,500 unread emails. He never, ever reads an email, but he would answer a phone call all day long. I would never answer a phone call, but I will read my email.
See, and that's the whole thing. And again, it's going to vary by person, and you got to be able to pick up that signal. This is why in your sales strategy, you have to be prospecting using different communication methods, because you don't know which one's going to work. For some, it might be phone. For some, it might be email. For some, it might be social media. You've got to use different approaches. And then when they respond, then I can begin to determine, is that their preferred? I don't know that necessarily until I have at least a couple communications back and forth.
Yeah. So, Bryn, thanks for popping in here, our LinkedIn and social media expert. Strategy 1, who needs what you do the most? Absolutely. Find that ideal. What are they doing, thinking, or exploring before they even know they need your solution? What value can you bring to them early on? Identify where they are and start conversations that matter to them that lead to your solution, not with it.
Well, that kind of leads to the question that we got. It came this week from Vincent in Italy. And he says, hey, I'm new to sales and your platforms really helped me. Can you discuss which sales strategies are effective to target B2B or corporate in the investment industry? So that's a very unique space. So I threw that into the sales logic brain. And one of the things that it came back with was utilize data and analytics, because it's the investment, because it's corporate, because it's B2B. By using data and analytics, you're probably going to be more effective in being able to communicate properly with that respective person. There's a host of other things that the brain said, but that's just the one.
I think, I feel like a little bit today, Mark and I have talked about, basically you've got to understand the customer and figure out what it is they need. You still need, Vincent, this is so important for you. You're brand new. You need to have a strategy and you need to have a plan. This is kind of like going to work out. Like this morning, Mark and I were both in the gym early. I was using my app for my weight workout. And basically I work a weightlifting scenario 4 days a week. And we do it based on 3 months. And then I adjust it based on whether I'm achieving my goals or not achieving my goals. Now, the same thing needs to happen for your sales strategy. So Vincent, you're brand new to sales. And basically what you need to do is, just like Bryn said, define your ideal customer profile. Figure out where they are, where they live, where they're looking for information. Then define how you're going to get in touch with them. You're going to make some phone calls. You're going to do some social media. You're going to send some emails. Maybe you'll send some things through the mail. Maybe you'll invite them to a webinar, whatever. You need to lay out the behaviors. Then measure it for 3 months. And see how it's doing. Figure out, did the phone calls land more? Did the emails land more? Did more people show up when I did a masterclass? What was kind of working? And then adjust it in the second quarter. Do it again, adjust it in the third, and adjust it in the fourth. I say that because I feel like a sales strategy is art and science. You got to get the science of the strategy down. What am I committing to do day in and day out? And then the art is figuring out what's working and adjusting it.
Now, there's another piece on that, and that is determining what your POE is. Your POE, it's your point of entry. In other words, what are you leading with? What's the piece? Now, we always talk about outcomes. You got to create, got to sell to the customer's outcome. But what do I get in the door with? What's that POE? And it has to be simplistic and the ability for the customer to understand your value proposition. If when you state your value proposition, 2 questions don't come to the mind of the customer, then you haven't engaged them. All you're doing is sharing with them something. You want to have a value proposition that generates interest from them, so they're asking you questions. Now I can begin to hone in on my POE, and the POE has to be simple enough for them to understand. Vince, this is what you're going to have a challenge with, because you're going into a very difficult industry. Investment community, corporate, B2B, that's challenging. So you've got to be very crystal clear, because they're probably looking at you like, why should we even talk to you? POE, absolutely important.
I first of all, I love that question. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. I want to talk about what John Wong has brought up here because I love it. Put yourself in a position of making connections each and every day. Okay. Drop mic, end show. That's all you need to know. This is such a discipline. A sales strategy is such a discipline piece. Mark said something a moment ago, and that was, why should a customer talk to you? That is a question we should be asking ourselves every single day. Do you realize that other than your money and time with your children, there is very little you are protecting more than your time? I mean, would I rather go play tennis or talk to a salesperson on the phone? If they are not adding something that is going to make me money, give me peace of mind, make my life better, I'm heading to the tennis court. So this isn't about you trying to get an appointment. It is about them going, oh my God, Vincent, there's nothing I need more to do today than to talk to you. You have to come up with that compelling reason.
So maybe I need to be a salesperson on the tennis court to sell to you.
Yes, you do.
That's how it's going to work. Okay. See, this is the whole thing, because if I don't have a strategy, I may have the best solution in the world. But if the customer can't understand and dial into it and buy into at least why they want to carry on the conversation, I don't have a chance. And again, that comes back to who is it that you are dealing with? And again, ICP, we talk about this a lot on the show. And I say, then you got to understand my communication method. What's the strategy? And I got to be very clear on my POE. But come back to what several people talk about, the network you create. We are living in an era where information is table stakes.
Yeah.
And we have to be carried in or co-opted in or collaborated with other people. So the relationships that people have, because if somebody can sit there and say, oh, I know Meridith, she's outstanding. I will take that call. This makes relationships, networking even more important than ever.
Yeah, I love what Dave Sanderson is saying here. Is history has shown us the devastating cost of inaction. I mean, that's just not in sales. That's every aspect of your life. And you have got to move. Also, with Mark, with what you're saying, I love what Bryn is chiming in here again with, is that you need to consider integrating a campaign into your strategy. Bryn, I love this. I just really added this to my sales strategy. Is I do a lot of cold calling. And I warm them up now with an email campaign and social media interactions, because I'm trying to get them at least knowing that I am bringing some level of value to the table.
That is so key, because your sales strategy has got to be repeatable and simplistic enough that you can it just becomes routine, because otherwise you're fighting, pushing a rock uphill every day. I talk with some of the top performing salespeople out there, and they all sit there and say, it's so boring. It really is boring, because I just repeat. But that's the key to success. You've got to be able to, like you, I email, I call, I email, I call. Your strategy has to be repeatable, scalable, and sustainable. So many people have a sales process that is neither scalable nor sustainable. That's not a process. I just got a one-off activity.
Yeah, Thomas, you are dead on. I really agree that where salespeople struggle is they don't vary their strategy. I always say when I'm speaking about sales is that you've got to realize, through no fault of your own, you did nothing wrong. But some of the strategies you're using right now will not work in 3 months. I mean, think of this. Think about June of 2024. We hadn't decided the election here in the United States, and where people were was very different. Now, as they look at 2025, the outlook is going to look completely different. It's not about judging it, thinking it's right or wrong. It's understanding that the mindset of the people you're calling on shifts with things going on in society that have nothing to do to you. When that strike happened in California with the ports and the supply chain got shut down, that completely shifts your sales strategy.
It's so true. At this event that Mare and I are at, 2 years ago, we were introduced at this event to Chat GPT,
yes.
November of 22.
Yeah.
And it was just and we were on kind of leading edge. And you look at how that has changed everything. You see, you do have to be adept. But here's the whole thing. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Too many times what happens, salespeople come up with a strategy and they get into it and they don't stick with it long enough to statistically get viable results to understand. What I always say is this: I want to test my process 3 times the length of what it takes to close a sale. In other words, if it takes a quarter to close a sale, I really got to stay with this process by and large for 3 quarters to really understand whether or not it's working. Now, I'm going to make little tweaks along the way, little changes, but you've got to stay in the game. Now, there's tsunami events, like for instance, the election, Chat GPT. There's tsunami events that you got, but those you know what? You just have to put yourself in a position that I'm going to understand and learn and run ahead of where my customers are at.
I'm curious how many of our listeners physically use a strategy. Like, you literally, if I asked you right now, what do you do day in and day out to make sales calls? What do you track and what do you measure? How many would answer that? Because if your answer to that is it's loose, you need to tighten it up. I was just working this morning before Mark came in here and we set up this call on my sales strategy. I work a top 100 every single year. And basically every single month I track the sales calls I make, the sales follow-up calls I make, the proposals I write, the proposals I win, and the proposals I lose. And I know that I need to make X amount of calls a month. I need to write X amount of proposals a month. I need to win X amount. And I need to lose X amount. Why do I track the amount I lose? Because if I don't lose enough, I'm not keeping my price high enough. So that's what I track. So Vincent, I tell you that because where you need to start is before you ever lay out the behaviors, you really need to lay out what do you need to accomplish in order for you to hit your monthly goal? How many calls are you going to need to make? I've got to make 3 to 4 times the amount of calls that it's going to take me to get the proposal in order to do that. So I know that measurement.
I want to come back to that because you got to measure what matters. Too many times, just because it's easy to measure doesn't mean you should measure. I see so many salespeople, they are tracking things that really don't make a difference. Now, activities are absolutely key because the activities are we're going to drive your results. So like you said, the number of proposals you make, the number of calls you make, the number of emails, etc. But you're measuring that because that makes a difference. You're not measuring how many posts are you putting out on social media or how many likes or no, totally irrelevant. And you've got to hone it down. And if you can't get your metrics down to a simplistic number that you can very quickly gauge, because I also see people, and I see this when I work with companies, they measure their activities, but it takes them 3 weeks to get the results after the quarter's over. Okay, come on, excuse me, guys. We're already 20% into the new quarter, and you're out. It's got to be simplistic. If you can't measure your results on a daily basis, you're not measuring the right results.
Yeah, so true. John, I love what you're adding here. Is in essence what his comment is about, in the importance of being a listener. And John, I think that's really great advice to Vincent, who's just getting started. Vincent, I'd go out and I talk to per John's advice, I talk to really successful people in your industry and ask them what works in their sales strategy, what doesn't, and then talk to customers. Say, what works for you? What do you want to know about investments? What would be valuable for you? You can kind of go on a listening tour. And Hugh here, another valuable member of our Sales Logic Mastermind, really talking about, he agrees that inaction is never a strategy. Motion, 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 motion. It is everything, but you've got to have that defined strategy. If you don't have one, that's where you need to start.
Well, and that's the key that, again, I can be busy, but I'm not productive.
Yeah.
And this is what I see so many salespeople. Well, I'm busy. Well, what have you done to really create revenue? You haven't done anything because, again, you're putting your time into things that really don't matter. Keep your process tight, simple. I go back to top performers. They have a very simplistic process that they literally repeat. And what does it do? It allows them to efficiently sell and put the big numbers out.
So if you want to be good at sales, you got to dare to be dull. You got to dare to be boring, right?
Oh, yeah. Spot on with that. And here's the whole thing. Just because it works for somebody else, do not think it's going to necessarily work for you. Because how many times have like, Mary, you got a great process. I'm going to copy it. And I may not get the same results because I have different customers, different. You've got to start off. You can start off with a template, but then you've got to hone it down and make it fit for you. Because at the end of the day, sales is an emotional experience.
Always.
Stop and think about that. An emotional experience. And your sales process is a reflection of that. And it transfers over to your customer, which ultimately determines the results you get.
All right, we are burning time. What's up for the book?
The book, Blue Ocean Strategy.
Yeah, Mark and I have mentioned this book more than a few times. It was funny. I had a client email me yesterday that we're working on some leadership things, and he said, "Can you tell me can you tell me a few books to read to be an unbelievable leader?" And I put down Blue Ocean Strategy because I think if you really want to understand how to put together a strategy, Blue Ocean Strategy is the book you need to read.
And because it's going to push your thinking. It's going to push your boundaries. And that's absolutely key. Okay, you ready for the lightning round?
I want to make one comment before we get into it, because Mark, you made a great comment here that I really want our listeners to leave with. If it isn't making you uncomfortable, you're not pushing yourself hard enough. I just think that's so key, and I didn't want to let it go.
Is that why we were both? I was in the gym before 5. You came down about 5 a.m. Okay, because we're doing this live at 7 a.m. And it's you got to put yourself in uncomfortable situations to achieve the results that you want.
Right.
Lightning round. Ready? Top 10 strategies to stay motivated and selling through the holidays.
I think if you want to stay motivated and sell through the holidays, you need a plan of how you're going to do it, what you're going to do, so that there's no question in your mind how to do it.
2, you've got to realize that you have to play the long game and enjoy the holidays, but play the long game. Set yourself up for the first quarter.
Number 3, set a little competition with your friends and your peers so that you get a little guilt associated if you don't do the strategies.
Number 4, know that relationships matter. Right now, calls and conversations are more powerful than ever.
Yeah. Number 5, think about the vision and how you want to start 2025, and remind yourself that taking a little bit of action now will make getting started in 2025 that much easier.
When you do have to stop because you got some sort of a holiday event, stop. Be singularly focused on that, on your family, your kids, whatever it is. And then you get back into work. But don't try to do this multitasking thing during the holidays.
Number 7, use selling through the holidays as an opportunity to get a reward. Like, I have to make 3 calls before I go play tennis. So I know that I'm going to get a reward after. That gets me motivated.
We've only had tennis brought up 3 times in today's show. So clearly we have 2 more to go. Number 9 or number 8, I don't know what it is make sure that you are celebrating your success. Look back over the year, celebrate the success. Hey, congratulate yourself. And use that as motivation to keep going.
Yeah, I would say number 9, if you want to stay motivated by selling, get on every morning and watch a YouTube video. Watch something that gets you motivated. Join Sales Logic Mastermind if that's going to help you. All right, your turn.
Number 10 is make sure that you are focused on your goals, but it's the activities that are going to achieve them. If all you are is focused on the goals, it's easy to say, wow, I can't get there. Focus on the activities. That will drive you to the goals. Hey, with that, people should join Sales Logic Mastermind, because again, every month we've added a new feature called Sales Logic Expert Exchange. You got to be participating in these. There's so many things in the Sales Logic Mastermind. Just go out to saleslogicpodcast.com. You'll see all the information there. And we want to see you in the program for 2025. Hey, with that, we want to say thank you for listening to Sales Logic. If you like what you hear, subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast app. If something we've said has earned you a single dollar, consider telling a friend about our show, because it's how we grow when we help you grow. I'm Mark Hunt.
And I'm Meridith Elliott Powell.
Remember, when you sell with confidence and integrity,
all of this uncertainty suddenly becomes your competitive advantage.
And the sale becomes logical.
All right. We'll see you right back here next week for another episode of Sales Logic. Until then, go close a deal.